how light was shining through part of the tree leaves, and I was seeing the sun lighten the colors of green, and then I was seeing the shadows of the other leaves and how they were darker, and it was like this, and then the sunlight was coming through just briefly, and so I was seeing all of these intricate colors, and the way that all the trees were moving in the wind was very beautiful. And then I was looking around at other trees and I was noticing the red flowers on the trees over there on the other part of my lawn. And I was just looking. And I realized that that has naturally developed EMDR within the environment of just being outside. And those of you who are familiar with EMDR, it's about using eye movement desensitization to bring up traumas in our life to desensitize ourselves from it. But essentially, what it does is it makes our eyes shift back and forth, much like we are in REM sleep or deep sleep. Well, REM sleep, particular rapid eye movement, is what REM sleep stands for. That's associated with dreaming. And that's also when our brain is at a state where psychological reprogramming can happen. And so I'm just outside looking around, and then I realized, like, do we look around like this indoors? And I thought about being indoors. We're not really like looking at like what's in the shelf, what's behind that thing in the shelf, what does that book say, what does the corner of that room look like over there, what does the carpet look like? But outside, we're doing that. It's just naturally, there's just so much to notice out here, and it's all in movement. It's all breathing and the different breath of nature. We notice that. We contemplate it even, which is one of the legs of Eastern philosophy, right? It's this constant shifting, evolving palette of landscape that we're exposed to when we step outside of our stagnant and stale man-made environments. And that contributes to us moving our eyes around. And when we move our eyes around, that really unlocks our deep psychological programming and stimulates us to bring up to the surface things that may be stagnant within us, right? Like the memories of things that happened when we were younger. We just moved into this house, and this house is a lot easier for me to be outside. And I guess I've been thinking about that because I've been spending most every single day outside as compared to our last house, which was like an ocean view, beautiful house. But the backyard just wasn't so conducive for filming and computer work because it was just a lot. I don't know. It was like a big, huge view. It was just a lot. And this is just a little bit more contained and what much more easier for work, which means I'm out here more often. The last few days of my life, every time I've been going to sleep, I'm getting intense memories. Intense memories. And this really has nothing to do with the topic of what I came to talk about today. I was coming to talk about practiced voluntary difficulty as a means to make yourself more resilient for the stress of life. But I went to bed last night wondering, why is it that I'm getting these super enhanced memories as I've been falling asleep the last few days? And I didn't know what the answer to that was last night because I've been really just like reconnecting these memories, right? To remember, to become one with, right? They're real. It's just random stuff too. That seemingly I don't even know what it was, but it was like, why am I just thinking about, like, for instance, one of my personal training clients inviting me over to dinner with some of his friends, and I remember him showing us the house. And as I was going to sleep, this memory like popped up, like I was there again. And that's just an example, random stuff that's been happening to me. And I realized this morning, so this is like when you go to sleep thinking about a question. This was last week's topic, something that's unfulfilled. You can go to sleep with an unfulfilled question, and then that sort of sets the trigger off in your psyche. So this morning I woke up and I started thinking about how being outside leads to EMDR. And this is me just taking you guys through my process. And EMDR is associated with bringing up psychological trauma, which then we can process, and we can reduce the sensitization of it so that we don't shut down and we can actually process it. And then the fact that I've been outside just looking at everything, looking at the oranges and the limes and the flowers on the grapefruit tree back there, and the moss on the ground and every single grass blade that is back here when I'm out here most of the day, and how my eyes have been shifting around a lot. And then I also have been learning to juggle with the lemons. And that was because my eyes, I started noticing, have been hard reading labels on bottles. So I'm like, man, my eyes must not be moving around. So the last few days I've been doing all of this and purposely trying to move my eyes, having nothing to do with the EMDR. But this morning I realized that, like, oh, that's what outside does. That's why being outside is constantly associated with reduced levels of anxiety, reduced levels of depression. There's a pretty famous study, I don't remember the author, but you should probably easily Google and find it, where they took people, participants in the study, and just had them look at a tree outside for a certain amount of minutes. And then they had other participants looking at a building for a certain amount of minutes. And then the test of the study was they had a random person. It wasn't really random. They were in on it. A person walk by and drop all of their things. And then they measured the amount of people that helped that person pick up their things. And it was statistically significant that the people that were staring at a tree had tremendously more voluntary agency to help the person help pick up all of the papers that blew all over the place, because they were looking at a tree rather than looking at a building. All of this is to say, a lot of my brand has to do with being outside, and it's pretty amazing when I discover something new about being outside, and this eye movement and how it's associated to us processing other parts of our, quote, past, because it's unlocking those memories. And we don't always have to just go back in the past and have traumas. A lot of the times it has to also do with, like, maybe our state of behavior in the past that kind of weighs on us in the present, right? Like maybe the things that we said or the ways that we behaved, and how it could have hurt the feelings of others. A lot of that is still inside of us. And being outside, looking, oh, what's up, Web? Looking at nature. Web. Every morning, 8-mile runs and meditation, 736 days in a row. Dude, that's like 2 years, right? What's 365 times 2? It's like literally 730. So you're basically 2 years and 6 days of every morning 8-mile runs and meditation, my expression of voluntary difficulty. Exactly. I drove my Cadillac up a flight of stairs in my dream. IG hides you from me. Not sure why. Thank you. I'm getting hid from a lot of people. Thank you for being here and sharing with us. What's the topic? The topic is voluntary difficulty, but I'm kind of I'm starting off with a tangent of being outside and shifting your eyes around. I practice enduring my pain whilst walking. I'm a walking paraplegic now. A walking paraplegic? So I'm assuming paralyzed in the legs and also walking, which is amazing. Been walking, running for 5+ miles daily. I love you guys are like, hey, let's get to the topic. One person commented on the dream stuff. I was wheelchair bound 2016 to 2017. These days I'm walking 2 miles every day. Nice. So where do our thoughts come from is a question. That's a good question. I won't spoil it with an answer, but it's definitely yes to the question. A lot of memories popping up recently, also connected to love and childhood memories. It's been constantly the last couple of weeks. On nicotine withdrawal, day 2. Praise God, brother. I'm just reading the chat. Okay. So happy that you're off the nicotine. Nicotine's definitely making its popular comeback in terms of like a super substance. With that comes permission for those who may be using it beyond that capacity. It offers permission for us to sort of overdo it. I've listened to the so-called experts talk about how nicotine does all these miraculous things in the body. I'm lucky being in California, knowing the type of people that I do, knowing people that can get just pure tobacco that has nicotine in it, and with organically grown, all the things, and it still gives me a headache. Not while I'm on it, like the next day. And so is that a detox symptoms? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not sure about nicotine and whether I would advise. I definitely wouldn't advise people to use it every single day, but my opinion doesn't really matter. I'm also not an expert. Here in Western Pennsylvania, we had a low of 3 and a high of 22, but the sun is shining. Good. I heard the sun's back to shining. Okay. So voluntary difficulty. Have you guys heard of rites of passages? It's a pretty normal thing, pretty normal phenomenon that happens in cultures all over the world. And what is a rite of passage? A rite of passage, a lot of times, is a voluntary effort that a youth goes through. And the way that it's portrayed in the West is that it's a test. It's a test to see if the boy has what it takes to become a man, or if it's the test for the woman to see if she can be a woman, or the girl to be a woman. And really, the test for women is childbirth, right? Like that's kind of their gateway. I don't necessarily see it as a test, even though it has all the components of a test. It's a practice, because the test doesn't end after the test is complete. It's a practice, and it's a practice that's missing in our culture. Based on all the ideas I've gotten from you in the past few months, I've been leaning towards positive psychology. I never thought to use positive childhood conquest to empower me now. Yeah. Everything we've went through is building the foundation of our launch pad now. So it's quote positive, but really the word is perfect. Everything that has happened to us perfectly as they did. Otherwise, they wouldn't have happened. For me, I try and think of inarguable statements. How can something have happened that shouldn't have happened? I currently cannot imagine something happening that shouldn't have happened, because otherwise it wouldn't have happened. So if we apply that to our life, everything that has happened to us is happening exactly as it was perfectly, whether it's a design or whether this is random, it's happened exactly as it did. And with that knowledge, we can presume that that's our practice, that's our life. And it's up to us to make meaning of our life and the things that have happened to us. And the easy thing to do is to blame and to resist. That's the easy thing. But think about the easy things in life. Like what's natural for us to do. A lot of life is to feel what's natural for us to do, experiment with it, and then readjust. Right? Like think about everybody who's married who's listening to this. There's a lot of things that once you step into that role or a parenthood, the things that naturally you would like to do, just like chill out, be free, roam, leave the house whenever I want. All of these things, natural urges, don't really support the function of parenthood or marriagehood. So our natural tendencies aren't necessarily the best choice for ourselves. And that same concept applies to our childhood experiences, and in particular, adverse childhood experiences. Definitely, that's a more careful topic that needs to be addressed on an individual basis, customized to the self. And I would assume that the best person to do that is yourself. Yes, a therapist can help. However, yourself is the one who ultimately has the best agency for that. And let's get back to the topic, rite of passages. And I've got some questions for us too, which the questions that I have today are amazing. The practice that I designed for the self-expansion members, uh, the practice this week has to do with voluntary difficulty and the questions that are asked. So the first question is, or was, if I can remember it, the first question was, list 3 things in your life that you tend to avoid, or you tend to beat around the bush, or you tend to just ignore. And the reason for that is because you're choosing to not do the difficult thing, right? So the point of the practice is to prepare us to do the difficult thing. And so even if you're doing 8-mile runs in the morning and getting up at 5 a.m. and meditating, even though your mind's spinning around, what other 3 things do you avoid? Loving this new energy from you in your gardening. It's very calming energy. Can you guys hear the wind? I put this little funny looking thing on the microphone so that we couldn't hear the wind because it's really windy today. If I could see my way through the past challenge, accident, or test within my childhood, I can absolutely find beneficial opportunities for my life today. Okay. So that question, right? 3 things. And we're on a live right now, and I don't have control over whether you guys do this or not, but if you come up with 3 things that you tend to avoid, those questions lead into the next questions. And it's really cool. So 3 situations where effort is required and you tend to avoid, you delay, or you negotiate with yourself, you justify yourself with yourself why you don't need to do them, or you don't need to do them now. What are those 3 things? Nicotine has been found to bind on the cell membrane in the same place that COVID spike protein does. Following Dr. Artis, nicotine protocol is found to prevent COVID. Yeah, I mean, I've met Dr. Artis. I have his in person, and definitely know that he's on that, which is great. However, I'm just saying my own personal experience. Prevent COVID? I mean, yeah, I mean, smokers didn't really have much COVID. And nicotine and tobacco is like a sacred herb, right? But it's an herb, it's sacred, should be respected. I guess that's my statement on nicotine. Respect it. Okay, so you now know what the 3 things are that you tend to avoid, and try not to think about it too much. We all know what those are. What are the 3 things that we avoid? I don't care who you are. There's 3 things that you're avoiding, no matter what level that you're at. When you pick out those 3 things that are top of mind, because those are probably the most important, then you ask yourself, what are the costs of you avoiding that? What are the costs? Let's say you continue doing this for the next year. What does that cost you? What does that cost you? Anyone volunteering to write this in the chat would be amazing too. So I got exercise, sorting out my belongings, and getting engaged are 3 things. Getting engaged. I think that could be answered a little bit deeper than getting engaged. Like what actually do you avoid there? So we got 3 things that we avoid, and then what are the costs of that? What are the costs of that? And that really opens up a whole portal, right? Because now you can see if you didn't avoid what you could possibly have versus if you continue to avoid. And so that's a really fun question or series of questions to sit with. By the way, I'm going to be doing these lives. This is probably going to be my last week doing them open on social media. I'll probably just take segments of them and post them on social media like reels. These lives are going to now live in my selfexpansion.app community. And I will be going live for the members there. And there's going to be like there's a free trial-ish thing going on with that, but this is going to be more of a like actually listening what people have to say, answering these questions, talking about it, and I think that'll give more context. And I can't really do that on a free platform like this and keep everybody safe because there's going to be, you know, the people that come on and just mess around. So that's why it needs to be behind a paywall with people that are serious, and we can get some deeper conversations happening. I ask myself what is holding me back today. I've made such progress, but not quite fulfilling all I need. I think it's because the last parts are the hardest. So what are you avoiding? Commitment. Purging all the stuff I packed away in storage. The cost of physical pain. I have acute chronic pain for 25 inches of hardware in my back. The cost is physical pain. I didn't really get what you were avoiding. Clearing the clutter. Oh, here it is. Clearing the clutter in my RV. It's long-term food storage for my OCD behavior from the pandemic. But that's costing me physical pain? Because there's hardware in the back. If I carry on avoiding it, it would be detrimental to me and a setback. So many thoughtful humans grateful to be alive during these times. Thank you for your insights. I like this. Raw of Earth programs can be found at rawoferarth.com, selfexpansion.app. Yes. Okay, so the 2 questions are, what am I avoiding? What are 3 things? And then the second question is, what are those 3 things costing me if I continue to avoid them? That's life-changing. It literally is life-changing for me. A lot of these practices I've done multiple times. Some of them I'm doing the first time while I'm recording every week when we do a different practice. And for this one, I was doing it for the first time while I was recording. And the discovery is profound. I still know exactly what those 3 things are that are my costs. And I think that, and what they cost me. And like with a new baby and a relatively new marriage, the costs are pretty profound to continue avoiding what I'm avoiding. Like, really profound. If you look at it as a function of the lifestyle of a new baby and what that new baby will become throughout adulthood, the costs are profound and relatively small risk for doing the thing, right? Okay, so question number 3 is looking at these challenges that you're avoiding. So this is almost like a restart, right? Try not to get question number 2 out about the costs. Go back to question number 1 about the 3 things you're avoiding and look at them, analyze them, and ask yourself, if I do these, what is it practice for? What is it training? Why are these things coming up as difficulties for me? Because obviously, if they're difficult for you and you're choosing to not go into it, not practice, there's an underdeveloped trait of self that's being exposed through this experience, through this journaling exercise, you're discovering things that you're avoiding. And through this third question, you're discovering what is the point of this challenge to contribute to you evolving as a human being here on Earth. It's painful to reach and lift things. Hi. Avoiding sorting house and hoarding following bereavement. Living in a home that, and then that ends. I avoid giving space and being strict with my 5-year-old daughter so she can eat healthy foods and be independent. The cost is her being unhealthy and still in the baby mind mode at 7 years old. By the way, guys, I have kind of quit mentioning names of the comments just out of respect for people. So I definitely admire and would like to bring you up on stage and mention your name, but there's just some sensitive things. So I tend not to mention names, but thank you guys for participating. So I'm going to reread this. I avoid giving space and being strict with, I avoid giving space, and then I'm assuming it's, and I'm strict with my 5-year-old daughter because he's avoiding, or she, don't know what this is, avoiding the space so she can eat healthy foods and be independent. The cost is her being unhealthy and still in baby mind mode at 7 years old. Spending time with myself, sitting and being peaceful. Aren't all challenges rooted in our beliefs? If we can snap out of those beliefs, how liberating would that be? Right, but that statement of can we just snap out of our beliefs, it doesn't exactly happen that way because our beliefs are rooted in our subconscious. And so our conscious mind, which is happening now in like this beta level of brainwave frequencies, doesn't have access to snap us out of programs. We need to get into a theta level because that unlocks our subconscious and we can start making changes, which is why I started this entire talking about being outside in I didn't mention this meditative state, looking around. That's what you are when you're in nature. And then also these practices are always paired with an embodied, energetic breathwork, chanting, meditative movement practice because of this exact fact. We have to unlock our subconscious programming so that these answers to these questions can get deep to the root of why we believe these certain things. So a lot of times, like this comment, aren't all challenges rooted in our beliefs? Yeah, the belief is that we won't be safe if we move into this challenge. And so that's why it's a challenge, because we don't believe that or trust that we're safe in that scenario. Just to give you an example. So once we gain perspective and look at the different aspects of this, we understand what the avoidance is. We understand what the costs are, which is question number 2. We understand what the challenge is granting us, which is question number 3. It's an enhanced perspective. And then we can logically determine that the cost to risk ratio of doing the challenging thing is highly weighed on doing it versus not doing it. Like there's tremendously more cost by not doing it. And so logically we understand that we then must move the energy through our body to get rid of the distracting thoughts and the distracting nature of our day-to-day to get us deep centered in self so that we can really root that and embed that into our body, because our body's actually where all of that is happening. We think it's up in the mind because that's what we think with. The mind is blind to the fact that the body is actually making a lot of the decisions that originate those thoughts in our mind. The fascia is a web that's like a record of all the experiences in our life. And all of those experiences are encoded, like it's like a record is encoded in our body. Any body worker will tell you this, that their clients talk about like things coming up when they're working on the stagnations in the body. Third question was what is this challenge training? Thank you for that. Avoiding control costs others controlling. Oh, so it was avoiding being strict. Got it. Okay. Avoiding control costs others controlling. Any thoughts on how we can identify and analyze our deep-rooted beliefs? So these questions are one way. I really appreciate the energy moving practices on your self-expansion app. Thank you for joining us there. Unlocking the potential, it is small risk, exactly. Just do it. Move the body. Fascial maneuvers are the only thing that have helped me in the 34 years of my life. It's why I stop and start constantly. Yeah, I mean the human garage fascial maneuvers are amazing. That's why I'm, linked up with them, and we share similar thought processes on how we think the body works and behaves. And so I'm really aligned with them on a lot of and also I learn from them. I'm not strict. I go with the flow and practice being mindful. And in the moment throughout the day, I agree with what you're saying and making it a point to tune into what your body is feeling. Okay. Question number 4. And this is not as profound as the other 3 questions, but question number 4 is action, right? There always needs to be action. What's the minimum effective dose? What could you do today or the next 48 hours is I think what I assigned. In the next 40 hours, what can you actually do? And this one actually is important. I remember the second part of question number 4. So question number 4 is, what's the minimum effective dose that you could do on each of these 3 things? And the second part of that is that minimum effective dose needs to have clarity. And so you need to know when you're doing it by and what the finish line looks like. So what you're doing, when you're going to do it by, and what the finish line looks like. And so when you're making a commitment to yourself, what are you doing? When are you going to do it by? And how are you going to know that you did it? If you can't answer those 3, then you need to pick something else. Another step that's answerable to those 3. So an example of an question or an answer that's not good is, okay, what's the minimum effective dose for this? So it's like, I'm going to be a happier person. When are you going to do that by? What are you actually doing? And how are you going to know what the finish line is? It's hard to come up with those concrete, like the concrete finish line on being happier, right? Because there's not really a tool for that. And so in another example or another answer could be like, I'm going to smile at every building that I enter. I'm going to smile at the doorway as I'm entering it. And I'm going to smile at every single person that I make eye contact with. And I'm going to make eye contact with every single person, and I'm going to smile today. And so now you've got clearer, more specific targets. And that in turn will allow you to express aspects of happiness. So just coming up with like broad things, like I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to be happier. I'm like, get specific. What exactly are you doing, by when, and what does the finish line look like, right? I'm going to finish my 20 minutes of meditation and not quit. The finish line means that I'm going to get through the whole meditation or the whole class or the whole practice. I want to do the whole thing. That's someone who avoids finishing things. And then there's a little bit on identity, but you can go to the practice for that. The practice for this was called Practice of Voluntary Difficulty. Yeah, that was the name of the practice. Guided with astrocartography. Interesting. There's certain energies going on through the earth, and we can align ourselves to those energy vortexes. We can place ourselves on different parts of the earth if we're looking to enhance different aspects of self. I have found them helpful for sure. Oh, the self-expansion practices. What's the action? Select the due date and write down a way to know I did it. The action is, what are 3 minimum effective doses that allow you to get closer, like stepping into those 3 challenges? And minimum effective dose is an important specificity. It means, what's your first step? It doesn't mean finish line. It doesn't mean halfway finish. It doesn't mean I did a bunch of progress. It means first step. What's the first step in the marathon? What direction are you going? What are you doing? By when are you doing it by? And what does that completion of the first step look like? A lot of us just think in general terms. I'm going to start, I mentioned, like being healthier. So there's not a specific step that you can do in the next 48 hours and you can feel that accomplishment. I talked about identity, which is rooted philosophy in our subconscious, which is actually how shift happens. That identity change happens through trusting yourself to complete things. And when you have an acknowledgement of the first step as complete, it makes the second step be clear, and you can acknowledge the completion of that. How many people do you know that are on a journey that's important to them and feel like they haven't done anything? Basically, almost everybody that's doing something important for themselves, but they have no way of acknowledging their progress. So what stands out? What stands out is what they haven't completed yet, because they're not looking down at the steps. Recognizing the steps of progress is like equivalent to stopping and smelling the roses. We can just go through things blindly, and we're never stopping to smell the roses of the steps that we completed. And so make sure that you're doing that. I'm trying to read a comment at the same time as I was like closing off that whole thought, and I prematurely close it off. Do it. Just do it. This is how astrocartography helps me with timing of where I am in my location and what I should be doing, etc. Yeah. Wow, I can't believe I'm hearing these words today of all days. Thank you. Yes, accountable baby steps. Yeah, I enjoy this, you guys. I enjoy this a lot. I choose this. I choose this. All right, guys, got to go. Getting water delivery. Peace out.